Greg here with maritimegardening.com, and I'm doing a video here on my 2021 garden plan. I usually do this every year if you're new to my channel, and this is just to give people a sense of how my garden gets planned. Planning on a garden is a fairly overwhelming task for a lot of people, especially when the garden gets larger. And it doesn't need to be that way, and the easiest way to avoid being overwhelmed in the spring in terms of planning the garden is to do as much of that in the winter months when you've got nothing else to do. Right, well, you can rethink it and plan it, look at it a few times. So what I've done here is what I would call my first pass. So I make a list of all the things I want to plant, and I find a place to stick them all, and then I mull it over. I order everything and I mull it all over. So let me back up a little bit and just take you all the way back to the beginning. So, I've been doing this for a while. This is an Excel file, and it captures, I've got records, right? So I've got this is what that garden space looked like in 2014, right? The garden used to be in my backyard. I mean, this is all my backyard, but it used to be right next to the house for a couple years. We bought this house in 2011. So we bought it in the summer of 2011, so there was no garden that year. I left a beautiful garden in our previous house. In 2012, I put a garden in. 2013, I made the garden a bit bigger. And at the end of 2013, my wife said, I think the kids deserve a backyard. Why don't you jam the garden back in that field back there? And you can make it as big as you want. I don't care. And that sounded pretty good to me. As big as I want, really? So this was the first year, the way the garden looked. And all I did was just take a picture. And, this is using Excel. You can have these little boxes. You just choose a insert shape, and then you can put text inside the shape. So just inserted a rectangle and put text inside the rectangle. That's all I did. Sorry, the picture, one of these years I got to take a really good picture of the garden for these videos. I mean, all this is a screen capture from one of the intros to one of my garden tours. Anyway, so this is 2014 and 2015. Usually what I do at the end of the season, I make a few notes. Like the notes for 2014 was, make it bigger next year. And then 2015, you can see that I made it bigger. And this is just at the end of 2015, writing down where everything went with some more notes. And then 2016, you can see it's the same picture. So in 2016, I started with the current system I'm using right now. I have a record of the garden I had the previous year, and then I use that to plan the current year's garden. And then, so based on my 2015 garden, I decide where everything's going to go in 2016. And at the end of 2016, I get a picture of the garden from that year. So this is my 2016 garden, and write down where actually everything went. Like 2016, I had a plan of where to put things. I was going to put peas and beans up in this top right-hand corner. And I put potatoes there. Changed my mind, right? And so on and so forth. So based on the 2016 garden, I came up with a 2017 plan. See, same picture, right? Same useless scarecrow. I put a note saying the scarecrow was useless. I was having problems with, birds eating my strawberries. And I put a scarecrow up and it did nothing. You got to put a net over that. Right? Every year I've got some sort of note. Peppers need plastic until July, which is what I do now. I learned that through trial and error. I used to live in a different part of the province where that wasn't necessary. But here, it's just so cold and so lousy in the spring. By lousy, I just mean there's not a lot of sun shining on the garden. It's just not a very sunny place. So you need to do everything you can to get the heat. And build more hoop houses to direct seed tomatoes and eggplants, which is something I did. That was 2017 in the plan. And 2017 garden, you can see a major difference, right? This is the 2016 garden, and then 2017 garden. It's expanding, right? So at this point in time, I had the main garden. You can see the little place where I normally sit. The bench looked different then. And then the area now that's beyond the fence was just beginning to be a thing. All potatoes that year. So where this fence is right now is almost like the middle of the garden. Maybe not the middle, maybe almost 2/3 of the way across the garden. So there's a whole nother, row here and another row to the left of it now. But at that point in time, the fence was here. You can see the apple trees, right? If you know my garden, let's look at it now, right? So here's the 2020 garden. There's the apple trees, right? Right, there's the main garden and the row of apple trees. I can't even get it all in one frame now. There's the apple trees, and now I got where the fence was, I've moved that over. There's 3 more whole rows now of garden. Right? Back in 2017, the garden stopped right there, and I was just claiming this space. I just made those Ruth Stout beds. Many of you might have been drawn to my channel from those videos. That's how it all started, right? It was just wild back there. The whole thing started off like that. You can see right at the beginning. It was just a field of weeds with kind of like a clay type soil, just hard clay soil. And, I developed the space using horse manure. So then 2018, the garden's starting to take the shape it currently has. I developed the garden a little bit more. I had I used my 2018 plan and 2018 garden. The previous year, 2017, these were all potatoes. The following year, because the potatoes are the easiest thing to plant in year 1, I made those gardens many more things, and I started a whole nother row of potatoes to the left of that, right? And then we get into the 2019 plan, right? Right, and so on and so forth. This thing's getting more and more, things evolving and getting more complex, right? This was my 2020 plan for the garden, where it didn't even look the way it looks right now. See, because the fence is still there in 2020, right? And now the fence goes all the way around, right? So I already started with the sand, I think 2019. Yeah, so at the beginning of 2019, I did not have sand. I think in May of that year, that's when I put the sand in. So pretty stark difference, right? The sand's really changed the way the gardens work. It just holds more heat. It's a hotter place now because the sand holds so much heat on sunny days. Anyway, getting back to the process, because I'm kind of getting all over the place, and I apologize for that. How I decide what I'm going to buy and where it's all going to go is I have an Excel file where I've got a list of seeds, right? You can see I've done it for every year, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, okay? So I have a record of everything. Now, I plant more things than is on this list. I have other seeds I save and things like that. I don't get everything from Vessie's. I get like 95% of my seeds from Vessie Seeds because they give them to me, right? They're the show sponsor. So all I do to plant a garden is I go to their website, and they got a tab here, vegetables, and I go all the way from A to T. Right? I'm not going to plant artichokes. I already got asparagus. Oh, I need beans. So I click on beans, and I just look through the beans and read the thing. And I usually try, every year I usually have, most of the things I like, I have 2 kinds of everything. So I usually choose one thing I've done before that I really like. And because there's so many things to choose from, I usually try something new. So for this year, for beans, I'm going to try this thing, a new bean called Lewis bean. I've got another reason for that too, though, because I'm doing a kind of series of videos called the 3-bed garden, and the Lewis bean figures into that. Anyway, Lewis bean, provider bean, rattlesnake bean. I've got my own rattlesnake pole beans, but I did such a poor job of saving seeds, and I grew so few last year that I don't know that I have enough seeds. I kind of blew it. I've been saving my own seeds from that one thing for years, and I really did a lousy job of saving them last fall. I really don't remember where I put them. So, it's not the end of the world. You can buy them, right? So, I'll just get some more of those. They are an heirloom crop, so I can save the seeds from these. And then I went on to B, right? You can see this is alphabetical, right? So I just go through on their website, just like literally window shopping. Oh, I like broccoli. I'll get some broccoli. Which one do I want? And I choose the one I want. I chose the artwork broccolini that I grew last year because I just love the properties of it, how vigorous it is, and how you can keep continuously. I like the continuous harvest aspect, right? Because that way you plant them, and I don't know, sometime in July you can start harvesting them, and then you can harvest them right up until, like for me, right up until December practically, right? I just work my way all the way until I've chosen everything I could possibly want. And then the hard work begins, because then I have to decide, do I have a place to put everything? You notice on the seed list, I've got the bean, the skew, and how many of them I want, and then because I send this to Vessi Seeds, right? And then the why is, have I found a spot for that to go, right? So that's the hard part, is deciding where everything is going to go. And all I do is, you can see this is the same picture, right? This is my 2020 garden in July. This screen capture from my July 2020 garden tour. And I write down where everything was this past year. This was beets, this was garlic, this was beans. This is where everything went 2020. And then, right, there's 2020. Here's where it's going to be 2021. You notice differences, right? Let's start up the top right-hand corner here, over here. So that bed was potatoes. Now it's this bloody dock. This yellow thing, it's a spare one. I haven't got anything for that. There's always something I didn't think of that needs someplace to go. That might be strawberries. I might do strawberries there this year. I don't know. Anyway, I always have a couple blank spaces, a couple down here too. You just can't see them because the beans are in the way. But these two beds up in the top right-hand corner that were potatoes, the potatoes grew, but this is a shady spot. It's sort of in the lee of the forest. This direction off to the top right is south, so which should be good. But there's all this trees and foliage and stuff. It's a bit shady here. So the potatoes grew, but they didn't do excellently. So I had some bloody dock, which is a kind of red vein sorrel, and French sorrel, and I just decided to make those beds a dedicated perennial bed for those greens. They'll come back every year. They're tough. They're going to work out great. This bed was a dismal failure as lettuce. I'm going to make a potato. I don't know how well it's going to do. I just need to grow something else there. I needed a place to stick potatoes. I like to have at least 5 beds of potatoes. At least 5 beds of potatoes. That seems to keep me in the potato business. Generally speaking, this row here, where it's, it says kale, garlic, and so on, I just shift everything over one. So this is 2020, 2021, the kale's going over one, right? The garlic was here. You can see these are garlic. The garlic's going over one. The carrots are going over one, right? 2020, 2021. So everything's moving over one, right? The cukes went from here to here, right? This was peppers. I don't think I'm putting them down. I'm putting the peppers somewhere else this year. I'm not going to give them that prime real estate. Up here, I tried growing pumpkins up here. That didn't work out so well. I think it's too dry here. I don't think the plants get the kind of water they need for a plant like pumpkin. I could be wrong. And also it was the first year I built the bed. Usually, unless you're bringing in amazing soil or something like that, the way I garden anyway, it takes a number of years for the soil to improve. Sometimes it really depends on what you grow anyway. I was not happy with the way the pumpkins grew. It's a very sunny place because it's a south-facing slope. So I thought, well, why don't I put some heat-loving plants that are that's the other thing. It's outside the fence. So I'm hoping the deer will leave the peppers and the eggplant alone. It's my understanding they tend to. It's not guaranteed. But anyway, I'm going to try to grow them up there. We'll see how that works. I certainly don't want to try pumpkins there for a couple of years because it just did not. I thought it would work great, but it did not work. I just think the soil needs to have better water retention properties for squash to grow there. So a few years of just growing different things there and mulching it, and hopefully it should improve. Last year, this bed was a lot of kale here, and I'd grown kale in this. This is the bed that sort of, on the inside of the garden, it skirts the contour of the base of the slope. I didn't really do much rotating here, so I kind of grew kale 2 years in a row. So this year, there's no kale there. I'm still going to have parsnips. I sort of divide it in 3 8-foot sections, right? Parsnips grow really well in this spot. They love it here. So I try, I've decided that I'm always going to have parsnips somewhere. So next year the parsnips will go down here sort of thing, and then maybe back over here. I don't know. This over here I think was, what was that? Carrots, or it was potatoes last year. I'm going to make it Swiss chard here. It's never been Swiss chard. This spot here tends to get, if I grow any sort of kale, this again, it's another spot in the base. It doesn't, not really south facing, it's sort of east facing, so it just gets the morning sun. And we don't need as much Swiss chard as we do kale, so it made sense to put Swiss chard here. I also find it to be relatively pest free, for my garden anyway, compared to other things. Certainly more so than kale. I've tried growing kale in this bed here, and it always just gets eaten alive. I think it's because of its proximity to this field here. So parsnips are pretty pest proof. Leeks, I'm going to try leeks here. Leeks are pretty pest proof. I find potatoes to be, in all the ways that matter, and pest proof. That, you know, the potato foliage does get some damage in all my beds, but it doesn't seem to affect the productivity of the plants. They seem to just shrug it off and continue on with their lives. I don't have to use any, you know, all these different crops here, I don't have to use anything to deal with pests. I just let nature take its course. Always seems to work out fine. I'm going to leave these two beds here. Strawberries. This bed last year was, you guys, you can see corn and beans all the way around. I believe in the fall I made this whole thing garlic. Planted a lot of garlic here. This bed's almost 8 by 8. This whole thing's garlic. Massive pile of garlic. I think this bed here last year was garlic. Now it's zucchini. I don't know if this is going to be corn and beans. Last year this was beans with corn in the middle. Worked really well. You kind of want corn in a square so it can pollinate itself properly. I haven't really got a good home for corn. So, I mean, I'm ordering it, but at this point in time I haven't solved the riddle of corn. And I might change my mind. I mean, you know, it's one of those things, I love growing it, and I grew really good corn last year, and I was happy with it. But it takes up a lot of space, and you don't get a lot of corn from here. For the amount of corn I get out of a corn garden, I could get so much more potato. I could get so much more carrots. I could get so much more things like that. And the corn, it all grows. You got to eat it all in like 2 weeks. You know, it takes up a huge amount of space in your garden, creates a lot of shade for other plants, and really you get corn for about a week or two when that is done. It's really nice to have, and I love it. But and even in a large garden like mine, I have a hard time committing the space to corn because I just don't consider it to give much back. Of course, I'm going to do my usual potatoes and peas. Peas down the center in a large high trellis, potatoes around the perimeter of the bed. And this bed down here is just a perennial bed with strawberries. I'm ordering some new strawberries from Bessie's Seeds, and I'm contemplating just ripping out the ones I have and replacing them with. Right now I've got everbearing strawberries, and I like them, but in certain regards they're more trouble than they're worth, because they're producing all summer long. You always have to be thinking about them, and you know the main thing we like strawberries for is jam, and there's some advantage to them being June-bearing strawberries. Right now I've got everbearing, so they give you some in June. Intermittently, they give them to you all summer long, so you have to perpetually be picking them, or you're just feeding squirrels and chipmunks and stuff, creating problems for yourself. And then you get another crop in September, October, when, you know, that's the most productive point of the garden. So you're overwhelmed trying to keep up with everything coming out of the garden in September, October. Now you've got these strawberries on top of that, and you got to make jam. To me, there's a certain logic to having all the strawberries come out in June, end of June. Early July, because there's really not a lot else going on in your garden in terms of harvesting. It's not a busy time of the year in July, because you've got, in late June, early July, you're really not pulling a lot of stuff out of your garden. You're getting some things like spinach, I suppose, and lettuce, but really your garden is just getting going. So you've got the time to be making jams and preserves and stuff like that. So it makes a certain sense to have a June-bearing strawberry. So I think I might make that change. The lower part of the garden, it's really just a shuffling. A few things have changed. I'm going to work some onions into that. Last year, this bed down here was garlic and onions. For 2021, this whole bed is going to be, I'm devoting it to almost as a perennial garden. For 2021, it's going to, I put a whole bunch of Egyptian walking onion heads in this bed. And I'm going to try just for a number of years just leaving it to the Egyptian walking onions. I'm really pleased with them. Their productivity and just, having a steady supply of onion greens and oniony stuff without doing anything. I mean, I've got enough to fill an entire bed, and I have all of this because 2 years ago a lady I work with gave me 4. Gave me 4 of them in a grocery bag, and now I've got like a ton of them, right? And I'm finding them they're very, they're kind of like a cross between shallots and scallions, right? You can use them like scallions, and the bulb part you can use like a shallot. So, you don't have the big fat onion bulb like you do with, regular sort of onion, but they continue to grow and they're vigorous. And I was still using these things in my garden till I think November. Geez, they can't be from Egypt. If they're producing in November in Canada, how on earth could they? I question the taxonomy of these onions and how they came to be known as Egyptian walking onions. My guess it's got something to do with hieroglyphics, and it's got nothing to do with an origin story, but who knows? So anyway, I'm going to devote that bed to Egyptian walking onions. Another thing, I'm not going to bother with collard greens. I do like them, but I just thought for a change I'd grow cabbage because for storage reasons. I think I can store cabbage in my garage as a long-term storage vegetable. I'm going to try it. And I haven't grown cabbage in years. And I like cabbage. I like coleslaw. I like having it in different things. It's a nice versatile vegetable. We'll see how it goes. And last year I didn't grow any kale down here. So I'm going to try having some kale down here. I'm also going to grow some stuff. Let me just get a little shape here. I'm going to grow some things. Just move that around a bit. Outside the fence. I know I got the fence, but last year I played around, tried on this area outside the fence here. I played around with sort of experimental potato garden. I didn't set it up properly. I got potatoes, but it was kind of a crappy result, and I didn't film it. Not because I didn't. It was just one of those days I had to get things out. So I got no problem admitting to the fact that it didn't work out so well. But it wasn't because of the method didn't work, because there's been years where I use that same method with success. So I'm going to take another crack at growing some stuff. I might do some potatoes outside the fence, but I also think I'm going to try growing some pumpkins out here. It's a really sunny spot, and I find that for me, I find them to be deer proof. So I'm going to mess around and see what I can get going on out there in that area. I got this whole area here blocked off as perennials because it's all perennials. I got apple trees, blueberry, strawberries, asparagus. One weird thing you can't see here on film, or on the picture, but there's lovage in with one of my apple trees here. I'm going to move that somewhere else. I got a few areas in the garden I think I can use better. Like I've got this garden right here, and it's got some iris, and it usually has tulips. And it's the first thing you see when you walk into this garden, this area right here. But there's no reason it can't be bigger, right? I think I could get another 3 by 8 out of that. So, I don't think I'm going to do much outside the enclosure this year. I think I'm going to do a little bit of work optimizing my use of the space inside the enclosure. I think there's still some space to be found inside here. Just get it a little bit more productive. I'm wasting a bit of space to have this, but I like having a little bench to sit down on. So, yeah, that's the plan. That's my process. Generally speaking, when I go to my previous year, everything just gets moved over one, and I like the idea to the left of the screen here for my garden is downhill, so everything moves over one to the left. I don't do this with everything. Some things just have to be, you know, moved around because they do. But generally speaking, I like this rotation, everything just going downhill, because that's what things do. Things go downhill. But to give you an example, this part down here, get rid of this thing. 2020, what I had down here was beans, potatoes, squash, collards, garlic. Okay, 2021, the plan is to go garlic at the top, cabbage, potatoes, squash, and beans. So that it's not everything shifting over one downhill. The potatoes went down one downhill, and the winter squash went one downhill. But I chose to put beans down here because this garden produced so poorly last year. I grew onions in it and garlic, and they were the smallest onions and smallest garlic I got. And this is a really sunny spot. I mean, they were smaller than another spot I got that's shady. And you know, I don't have the same problem people in hot countries have where there's such a thing as too much sun. Where I live, there's just no such thing as too much sun. But I don't care what you're growing. Everything can pretty much take, from my location, full sun is pretty much good for everything. Anything that needs full sun has to get it. And anything that can tolerate full sun, you know, just because there's so many days in the summer where it's overcast and foggy till noon. So a lot of things in a spot that should get full sun don't, because there's the day just, it's fogged in the morning sort of thing, and a lot of mornings start off that way. Anyway, so this bed was very unproductive. Everything coming out of it was unimpressive. So it's not the lack of sun, and it's not a lack of water. It's got to be the soil. So I did a video where I sort of, you know, did a little bit of makeover on this bed, put some seaweed and some nice mulch in it, made it into a horticulture bed. I gave it all the TLC I could possibly give it. And I'm going to give it one more edge where I'm going to plant the easiest thing in the world to grow, a plant that doesn't even need nitrogen. So I'm going to plant beans down there. And then the following year, 2022, the squash will go down. And that'll be the real test, because squash is a heavy feeder. Squash needs good soil. So if I get pathetic squash, then maybe I need to, and maybe that's a bit ambitious. Maybe I should plant something a little more forgiving, like potatoes. I don't know. But I'm just the type to sort of go for it anyway. So, you know, I'm confident the beans are going to work, and I'll move the squash down, and it should be fine. But the squash is a good test. You know, if your squash is growing good, you got good soil, generally speaking. Same with something like a corn, right? If you got good corn, things are growing good. I mean, people often ask me, you know, you have to fertilize your soil, you have to do this, you have to do that. I mean, look at this bed here in the middle where it says garlic. 2020, that was a corn bed. I had 8-foot high corn. This garden has never been fertilized. All I do is mulch it every year. All I've ever used was the existing soil here, which was the same stuff these crappy pumpkins grew in, right? But the difference is this soil's been developed every single year by having a mulch. This year was year one, so, you know, it was kind of, I brought some soil in from the surrounding forest, but that's, again, that's sort of like field soil. It's not that rich. This soil here has had horse manure on it first year, and it's had mulch after mulch after mulch, and many different kinds of mulch: seaweed, grass clippings, hay, straw, all kinds of different stuff, leaves, right? So this soil is black. This soil, light brown. Different kind of soil, different composition, different level of nutrients, right? But anyway, getting off on a tangent here. Anyway, that's the general process I use for planning on a garden. That's the plan for 2021. All these things here. I'll put the list of things I chose to order in the description box of this video for those that are interested. If you have a massive garden, I'm going to go with. Actually, I'm going to try a different kind of potato this year. The classic Russet. I'm going to get the Russet Burbank as I always do, but I think these actually run a bit bigger, so I'm going to get some of these. And I'm really not doing anything new in the potato department. I'm going to stick with the Norlands, and I really liked. I tried Purple Chiefs last year. I'm going to stick with that. Another thing I don't think I found a space for, so I should remove the yes there, is the Tokyo Silky Sweet. Last year I grew these. They were incredibly pest-ridden. The pests just loved these. But man, they were a good taste. I mean, just like nothing you've ever tried before in the turnip department. They're white, and they don't taste like a typical turnip. They're very sweet and a beautiful texture, and just, you know, like, you know, a regular turnip to me is something I would eat, you know, to avoid starvation. I like turnip, don't get me wrong, but it's not something I'm crazy about. You notice I don't normally grow, you know, your typical rutabaga. I'm just not crazy about them. My kids aren't crazy. I'll eat them. But there's things I'd rather devote I like squash a lot more than turnips, so I grow a lot of different kinds of winter squash. But these turnip, they're like their own, it's like turnip from another planet. That's the best way I can put it. So I'm going to have to find a home for them in my garden somewhere, because it shouldn't be, I mean, this process here of finding a place for everything, this is not a set of rules I'm stuck with. I change my mind. That's why I always have 2020 plan, 2020 garden, right? 2019 plan, 2019 garden. I never stick with the plan. I 90% stick with the plan, right? When I come home from work and I got a box full of seeds, and you know, there's a period of let's say April, May, June, where any given night, if I've got time to go out in the garden, I come in here in the office, I look at this picture, you know, and I just grab 3 things and I go out in the garden. I know where they're supposed to go. I usually have a diagram written down on paper, a map of my garden, really crudely drawn, of where everything's going to go. And I just run out to the garden and I put things where this picture tells me to put them. I don't have to think about it, right? I'll go outside for, you know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever time I have for that night, and put 2 or 3 beds in, right? And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to mull it over, right? Just go, just plant. Right? And some decisions I make on the fly and change things around because whatever headspace I was in January, February when I was planning this out, I changed my mind, right? I've got 2 beds for kale. These are like just blank ones. Certainly not planting kale in the sand. I always like to have 2 beds of kale, 2 beds of beets, 2 beds of carrots, 2 beds of parsnips. I've sort of started to realize the amount that I need. 5 beds of potatoes, right? Just some general rules of thumb that I try to follow to get the amount of stuff we want based on the amount we tend to eat. But yeah, I'm not married to this plan, right? This is just my best guess at where everything should go, but I always reserve the right to change my mind and decide things on the fly. But it's so, I mean, this time of year, I don't think your time is well spent trying to develop tomatoes that are 3 feet high by July. You know, I noticed on some of the Facebook groups, people are already starting their transplants. Now I don't do transplants indoors, but I used to, and every year I would get some things going in February and March. Generally speaking, with the exception of a couple things, that is a waste of time. You know, the bigger the plant is, by the time you want to transplant it, the more temperamental and difficult that's going to be. Anyway, that's transplanting. So that's my process. You know, if that's a new thing to you, that's how I go about doing it. It seems to work for me. There's all kinds of apps and things you can buy, and I just don't see the point of it. You can get a good picture, even draw. You don't have to do this in Excel. I mean, I sort of kind of a Excel nerd, and I do stuff in Excel for work. So I'm comfortable using it this way. But if I wasn't, I would just literally draw a picture on a piece of paper and write it down in pencil. That would work just fine. That would work totally fine. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. You don't need an app. You don't need any. I mean, if you like that stuff, sure, but you don't need any of that. But anyway, that's my process. I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. If you want to get free shipping on your seed order, check out Vessi Seeds. Use my coupon code GAVS21. You'll get free shipping. You can even order things like, as my understanding, you get free, as long as there's some seeds in your order. I'm ordering some strawberries. I'm ordering some raspberries because I'm changing my raspberries over. I even ordered some trees this year. Hopefully they give me all this stuff. But I'm pretty sure there's free shipping on all that stuff too, as long as you have seeds in your order. The details are in the description box of the video. But anyway, I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.